basis again. They don't seem to be able to acquire a form to do that. So one of the ways to do it would be through a hybrid, where you could incorporate the genetics of the dominant species on the planet and merge that with your own abilities and raise those hybrids in an environment that would be have allegiance to their cause. This is what the ETs are supposed to be doing, and this would fit a Djinn agenda as well.
So if I'm hearing you right, Rosemary, you're saying the Djinn might have been responsible for just about every kind of activity on this planet that people have assumed might have been extraterrestrial.
They have a finger in everything. What we don't know is what is the extent of their involvement. Are they the majority of our experiences, some of our experiences? Does it shift around? As I mentioned a little earlier, I have consulted researchers all around the planet in different cultures from different religious perspectives, and there are some who say the Djinn account for everything. And since they are hidden, and they really don't tell us what they're doing, nor do the abducting ETs. They're not being, those entities aren't being honest with us either. We don't really know. And it seems like we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to think about it. The abductions are fringe things that happen to fringe people, somebody else, when actually what is going on affects all of us. If we are the victims of a Trojan horse sort of campaign, at some point that's going to turn against us in very unfavorable ways. One of the researchers that I consulted in England made the observation that the Djinn are coming through these dimensional barriers in relatively small numbers now, but their plan is to come through many more strong. And if we are unprepared, it could be very disastrous for human beings.
Men in black, what might they be?
Another form of Djinn. And early on in my shadow people research, I couldn't help but make the connection between shadow people and men in black. Here was another link to the ET phenomena as well. Men in black are... The classic men in black are male figures dressed in dark suits and clothing, driving around in black cars often, and intimidating ET experiencers and witnesses. They have odd characteristics about them. This would be very typical of Djinn. They're not formed completely right. They have weird things about their appearances that don't make sense, weird ways of talking and acting, like they're uncomfortable in the physical world. But they seem to know a lot about contactees and abductees. They know where they live. They know their experiences. They know where to find them. And when contact is made between men in black and an experiencer, oftentimes a whole host of paranormal things start to happen. Poltergeist effects, nightmares, dream invasions, mental oppression, apparitions, missing time, and this seems to be part of the syndrome of harassment.
You know, it's amazing. How did you get going into your research? I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start.
You know, George, I didn't go, the odd thing is, I didn't go looking for this. It sort of found me, and I think it was research that really needed to be done. A lot of it started with shadow people. Now, I was familiar with Djinn, and I've been intrigued by them for a very long time. When I was doing research in witchcraft, sorcery, Solomonic magic, and topics like that, I came across the Djinn. And it was not until I got involved in shadow people out of my own curiosity. And, you know, the audience prompts me. I get requests from people for help in certain situations. I'll get a tidal wave of emails all related to the same sort of thing going on. And it prompts me to do deeper investigations. And then it was a matter of just following the leads. One thread led to another. I found that the deeper I went, the more complicated it got, and the more lines of inquiry opened up that had to be examined.
Well, are you enjoying this kind of research? I mean, did you come across anything that might have frightened you that you want to tell us about?
The whole scenario is disturbing, and my work in the paranormal and metaphysical field, it's on both sides of the fence. I've dealt with benevolent spirits and with spiritual enlightenment and growth and contact with high-level entities who have a much different approach toward human beings, a healing, illuminating kind of approach. And, technically, well, isn't that where we'd all rather be, with the good guys? But the dark side of things goes on. There is a dark underbelly to it, and it needs to be examined. So I do believe that this was a very purposeful part of my work, and that in many respects I was being directed by my own spirit guides to do this because nobody else was willing to look at it.
You've looked at the Watchers. Explain that in the relationship to the Djinn, Rosemary.
The Watchers from the biblical story, the sons of God, who were set to with the task of watching over humanity, coveted human women, left their posts, cohabited, and created the Nephilim, the monstrous cannibals. They were cannibals and vampires. They ate flesh and drank blood and spread corruption on the land. The Watchers are often described as angels, but really their behavior matches the Djinn. And this would be characteristic of the Djinn to have some sort of like a boss or overseer role and see what's, hey, there's something in it for us. So let's leave our posts and indulge ourselves. This would be very characteristic of Djinn behavior. And it was a deal-making sort of thing. And the Djinn are famous for making deals in exchange for teaching human beings the forbidden arts.
But don't they kind of renege on the deal?
Well, Djinn will often do their bit. They will make their end of the deal, but they also want human beings to make their end of the deal back. It's a two-way street. It's not, I'm going to do favors for you just because I'm Mr. Nice Guy. You're going to have to do favors for me, too. One of the things that I argue in the Djinn Connection is that we ought to re-examine a lot of our ancient alien, ancient god, demigod encounters and experiences from the standpoint of Djinn, because many of these beings and their behavior patterns are characteristic of Djinn. So the Djinn are salted in there throughout human history.
Scuttlers, what are they?
The scuttlers are a modern term for these shadow creatures, and they look like oily, oozy crabs, shadow crabs. They were described to me by one of my UK contacts, Miles Johnston, who had worked in the broadcast profession for a good number of years and was involved in pirate radio stations during the heavy conflict between Ireland and Northern Ireland. And these pirate radio stations would broadcast what they called intention-infused music across the border into Northern Ireland. This would be a form of thought therapy, that we infuse our music with good intentions and peace and harmony, and that this energy would be part of what would be received by the people listening to the music. Well, Miles discovered that they would have these frequent equipment breakdowns, and it seemed to center around the transmitter. So he would have to go inside the transmitter, and he got the shock of his life by opening up the equipment and seeing these forms inside, and they looked like crabs, and they would scuttle out of the way as soon as he would see them and light would hit them, much the same way that shadow people will often disappear when people look at them. They don't want to be observed for very long periods of time. These entities seem to be intrinsically involved in the breakdown of equipment, stopping one of